Good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone's doing great. It's super exciting again this year to be at Vivatech. I think everyone is buzzing. We're surrounded by some really fabulous technologies, and it's all quite inspiring. And we hope with this presentation to talk to you a little bit about Carbon8, what we do as a company, and hopefully inspire you just as much as some of the other presentations and companies have so far. So my name is Martin Van Roon. I work for Carbon8. I'm Carbon8's Chief Commercial Officer, and Carbon8 is a UK-based clean tech scale-up backed by some fabulous investors, including EDF. And we intervene in heavy industry to try and capture carbon, combine carbon with industrial residues, and make circular building products for the built environment. And I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about how we do that and what that actually looks like. So, we hear a lot about carbon capture, CCS, CCUS. There's a whole host of startups and companies really active in that space, lots of media attention. Sometimes we wonder a little bit when you try and visualize, well, what does carbon capture actually look like? And what does carbon capture actually represent? You'll be interested to note, actually, that the image behind me is exactly what it denotes. What you're looking at here is a circular building product, or an aggregate, in which we have stored between 10 and 30% of CO2 by weight. So the product that you see here is a mineralized aggregate, and what happens with our technology, which I will get into in a minute, is we take CO2 from point sources, from flue stacks, from bottled sources, and with our technology, called accelerated carbonation technology, we are able to sequester that CO2 permanently and efficiently into calcium structures that occur in a whole host of different materials. The problem we're trying to address, and we say, well, why is that important? Approximately 20% of all GHG emissions originate from heavy industry, and when we talk about heavy industry, we talk about cement, we talk about steel, we talk about energy from waste. That produces approximately 20% of GHG emissions globally. Next to that, the world has another problem, which we're also all trying to address, and that is the amount of waste that is actually produced by heavy emitting industries. And that amounts to around 2 gigatons on an annual basis. And to give you an idea of what that represents in terms of surface, in terms of land mass, those 2 gigatons are approximately the size of Belgium. And that's what we produce every year in heavy industry across the globe. If we look at our product and how the manifestation of that technology takes place, we have a product called the container, which you will see here behind me. That container is a plug-and-play solution for heavy industry. So we deploy this container in a modular format on industrial sites, and we stab it into 2 sources of those problems. One of them is the waste that those sites produce, frequently in form of thermal reaction that create residues. The simplest way of thinking about them is that they create ashes from combustion. We take those ashes and we combine those ashes with CO2 directly from the point source on the site which emits. We bring those 2 sources of waste and emissions, we bring them together, and through our process, which is a mineralization process in CCUS, allows us to manufacture a building aggregate, essentially. They're granules, the ones that I showed you on the picture before, and those materials are essentially circular building materials that can be used again, that either have a carbon neutral or a carbon negative footprint, allowing us to use the materials again and to build new things from them. Things like bricks for houses, things like feedstock ingredients, for things like fertilizers, allows us to make a whole host of new products. The container itself, as I said, integrates seamlessly into industrial sites. We're fully automated and connected to the cloud. One of the great things about that is with technology, and certainly with carbon capture, what's great about technology is that you can measure. You have engineered devices that have telemetry. That telemetry allows you to capture data, and that data allows you to actually provide an irrefutable source of truth that the carbon that you have actually captured is in fact the carbon you've captured. So there's no modeling, there are no presumptions. You capture what you capture, and you can prove that with data. And that's one of the great things about technology innovations in CCUS specifically. I move on to the The next slide in terms of, well, what does that offer customers? Why are customers interested in our solution? Essentially, our business model revolves around turning liabilities, both in terms of environmental impact, as well as in terms of cost impact for sites. We turn those liabilities for customers into assets. And the way that we do that through our technology is, again, as we see here on the left, we have thermal residues and we have CO2 emissions. We combine those two liabilities, both ecologically and economically for the client, and we turn those liabilities into assets for them. The first asset that that produces is that we save the client money in terms of having to landfill those ashes normally, which, for example, in the European Union is a very expensive and increasingly expensive affair. We take their CO2, and some of the industries that we operate in are regulated, for example, by emission schemes like ETS. Those have an impact value economically and ecologically as well. We take those are the two liabilities we take from the client, and our technology turns that into converted waste, new products, circular products with a negative carbon footprint, and those products can be sold again into the market for a positive economic value for the client as well. So lastly, what we have on here as well, because we obviously capture emissions and because we work in a carbon negative environment, that allows us to also operate either within the ETS environment, as mineralization is now meanwhile a recognized form of ETS reduction, but it also allows us alternatively to choose a route down into a VCM market path where we operate in the voluntary carbon market. And what that really allows us to do is to bring the cost of the innovation down for clients, to bring the adoption barriers down, so that both we can scale quickly and that we can have an impact for the environment at scale and as quickly as we can. The team in Carbon8, here as well, Carbon8 was originally founded in the University of Greenwich, so we are a spin-out from the University of Greenwich, underpinned by some really strong science and people with 30 years of background in geology, and then people from industry, both such as myself, our marketing manager who's with us here today, and some other really fabulous individuals. So that's what we do. Our tagline is, we create circular impact. We are a circular impact business, and that is Carbon8, and that is what we do.